Good evening, mediators. We are happy that you can join us once again for this very last session for our second symposium in the year. This particular session is a masterclass, and we'll be looking at the extractives sector. As usual, we begin with the anthem, and we shall be able to say this together. O God of all creation, bless this and nation, justice be
our shield and defender.
May we dwell
in
unity, peace, and liberty. Plenty be found within our borders.
Amen.
Amen. So, looking at this particular session, oops, sorry about that. I'm not too sure what I did. Okay, sorry. Okay, looking at this particular session, we will be trying to understand the issues in the sector, particularly in the extractive sector, and also trying to map a road map for ourselves as mediators. How can we be able to get into this particular sector? What are the things that we can be able to do in order to be able to engage effectively with people in this particular sector? To set us off, we have our commentaries. We have two commentaries from our young mediators. We shall have Amanda Maseno giving her commentary that will be looking at some of the disputes, and then we will have Rashid giving a commentary that will be focusing on the community engagement. So welcome, Amanda.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much, Sarah. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you for spending your time to come to this session and just discuss a little bit about the extractive sector. So of course our topic for today is the technical aspects of the extractive sector. However, I'll be touching a little bit on the disputes within the sector of extraction and what are some of the potential disputes that we've seen in our own country that can actually be addressed. So first and foremost, you are aware that there's the Lamu coal power plant and the Turkana oil extractive project. So those two are the ones that I'd like to touch on, and just to use them to kind of correlate to what we'll be discussing today. Sorry, my video is not on. Yeah, okay. You can see me?
Yes, Amanda, we can see you, thank you.
Okay, so first and foremost, I'll just be touching a little bit on those two particular projects, and I'll just mention a little bit about them. For example, one of the issues with the Lamu coal power plant is with regards to public participation and the fact that there was no consultation of the public, and that was one of the main issues that went to court. Secondly, it was how the EIA, the environmental impact assessment, was addressed. So these are just some of the issues that I can pick out from the conflict that came about. And secondly, with the Turkana oil project, the one that's in Turkana, one of the main issues was that the Turkana community itself did not feel like they were given enough information to be able to make a valid choice. There was also no access to information so that they can be able to know what kind of implications does this have on our community and on on our land as a whole. So the fact that there was lack of public participation and the fact that there was no information given to the community then made it an issue and made it a cause of conflict. So these are some of I'll just highlight these two and relate them as we go along. So these are some of the areas where mediators can come in and be able to deal with the conflicts that can come about. So one of the main issues maybe I can highlight is that in the extractive sector, it's the disputes, the kind of disputes that we have are unique, and they're unique to mediation in the sense that one of the things that are unique about it is that it's dual in nature, in the sense that it has the technical aspect and it's also an issue that can involve the political elite, and there can be conflicts that comes in because of the politics involved. So in order to maintain, and I'll relate this with a second point, which is the stakeholders that you choose to involve in the conflict as a whole. So for example, in such a conflict, there are so many stakeholders. You can see there's the community, there can be additional agencies that come in. For example, Amnesty International can come in with human rights issues. There are so many different potential stakeholders that can come in. So because of all these potential stakeholders, we need to be able to identify as mediators who are the parties you are going to involve. It could be the investors, it could be the government, it could be the people themselves. Should we also involve the stakeholders in settling this? And not the stakeholders, the additional what are they called? The NGOs, all those other non-governmental organizations. Should we involve them? So as mediators, we have to look into that, and we should know which parties are we going to involve in such a conflict because of the type of conflict that it is, because it involves the extractive sector. If you have such a wide array of people or of potential parties, then you may run the risk of being not able to reach a consensus, which is something that we're trying to avoid. So you should have the main parties involved. Yes. Secondly, or thirdly rather, we should also look at it from the perspective of what is the role of TDRMs, the traditional dispute resolution mechanism that exists within the community. So for example, if you look at it in the Turkana community, they have their council of elders. How can we involve them in trying to settle the disputes that exist? How can we ensure that their voice is heard through their own council of elders? And how do we make them feel that they have actually participated in the process and in resolving the conflict? Also, the last thing that I think I've come across that makes this kind of disputes special, or we need to take into account their uniqueness on a higher scale, is the fact that these people need to have access to information. Because if they don't know what they stand to lose or what they stand to gain, then they cannot make the appropriate decisions for themselves. So as the community or as the public, they should be furnished. It can be jointly through the other people involved, or it could be from an independent third party. They should be able to get the information that they need so that they can be able to make wise decisions for themselves. And this information should be furnished to them in a timely manner so that they can be able to make those decisions. And when it goes to the mediation table, they have all the information, and then they can be able to they can make informed decisions, and they can act for their own best interests. So having said that, one of the other issues I'd like to highlight is in relation to the investor issues, and what are some of the potential risks that investors may face. So investors, one of the things they're highly concerned about is the corruption within the sector. Corruption in the sense of they may not be able to, they may divest funds within a project, and because of the kind of system that you have, if you have a very bureaucratic system, if you have a system that is unfair, if you have a system that causes delays, then essentially there's the risk of corruption, there's the risk of delays. And these are some of the issues that investors may be facing, even as they want to invest and they want to enter into and they want to utilize the extractives within the community. Those are some of the issues that they may face. And this essentially can even lead to less investments within a country if the word out there is that this is a difficult country and a country that is not responding to some of the corruption claims, or it's just making it difficult for investors. That's one of the challenges that investors may face, even if they may want to invest: corruption and bureaucratic systems. Also, another issue is the government regulation itself could be quite challenging. It could be tough in the sense that government looks at a lot of interests. Primarily, of course, there's the economic interests, but there are also other interests it has in mind. For example, what are some of the environmental impacts? How is this foreign investor going to come in and carry out that extractive process? Because if it's something that's detrimental to the environment, then they may be wary of going with that investor. So these are some of the conflicts that can come to the table, and we need to find a way as mediators to be able to bridge that gap and address some of those issues. And of course, one of the main issues that comes in with government regulation is finance. What is the government getting in return? Through royalties, through whichever channel, the government is interested to know how exactly are we going to benefit from this project. So I think those are just some of the issues that come up when investors are involved and when investors are looking out for their own interests. Lastly, I'd like to conclude by saying another issue that probably investors may face is what the public's resistance, as we saw with the Lamu coal power plant. We also saw it through UNESCO championing that it's a heritage site. And also, apart from the public, it may also be the additional agencies involved. So we know we always have these human rights groups that come up, and those are some of the issues that they may face. So as a result, what happens is that there's a long amount of delay. And let's remember, they've invested their resources already. So all these issues are some of the investors' issues which can be tabled at a mediation session. So generally, for us as mediators, we need to be able to take into account, okay, this person has this interest as an investor, this person has an interest in this position, and bridge that gap so that we can be able to ensure that the extractive sector, as it's being utilized, it's done in a sustainable manner. Yes, thank you very, very much. Over to you, Sarah. Sarah?
Thank you, Amanda. We appreciate your sharing the commentary. Rashid, is your audio okay? Rashid, can you hear me? Okay, Rashid may be having a problem. Okay, I see it connected to audio. Rashid, are you good to go? No, okay. So perhaps Rashid will come after we have the main presentation. We have Dr. Muchiri with us again to be able to take us through this session this evening, trying to gain some insights on artisanal mining. It's always very enriching to have Muchiri because you're always learning new things. Muchiri, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, karibu sana.
Yes, I'm sorry that I came late. Just getting distractions from Shuguli's back home. Thank you for this opportunity, and I'm hoping we'll learn something together at the end of the whole presentation. So I was asked to talk about artisanal mining. So I think most of the guys who are here have been with us, so I don't need to explain what is mining and what we do and what is artisanal mining. But I can define what is artisanal mining, and I can show you three kinds of artisanal miners. So in a nutshell, is artisanal mining is a subsistence miner who is not officially employed by a mining company. So there are three kinds you can find. One is an illegal miner. The other is an artisanal miner who's a registered miner by either the authorities, the government, or the local, the national government. And there are part-timers or peripheral miners. This applies in places like South Africa, where they hire when the need rises. So these part-time miners will come to the mine when they're needed, especially where they need people to go down and do something we call air legging, so that they can get the pile out, because the machines can't go 4 kilometers down there. So they need these guys to go down there, and they will pay them for whatever they've gotten out. So artisanal mining can be either illegal or legal. So depending on how you look at it, it's either illegal miners, because also in South Africa they have illegal miners as well, other than the part-timers who are employed by brokers or the companies for outsourcing in terms of the labor. So for one, artisanal mining is associated with them using crude methods because they lack the technology or the purify gold. Whether it's cyanide they use, they also have crude methods of handling the cyanide, because there are regulations that are set up for you to handle cyanide when you're processing gold. So it is when looking at artisanal mining, people will think like, can we just ignore these guys because they are small numbers? And the small numbers, it's not small if you quantify them in whatever the scale they're doing, either in a country or in Africa or in the world. I'll give you statistics like two, where they've said that more than 100 million people rely on this sector income, mainly in developing nations, where 40.5 million men, women, and children are engaged in SM. So you find some people in gemstone mining, some people in gold mining, some people in diamond, depending on the country. But if you look at gold, the gold supply in the world, much of it comes from artisanal mining. 20% of the global gold supply comes from artisanal mining. 80% of gemstones, mostly like the Tanzanians and the Kenyans, where you have taborites and tanzanite, one of the rare stones in the world. You have 80% of the gemstones that we mine in the whole world comes from artisanal mining. So there is an economic side of artisanal mining. That's why we have to either formalize the industry itself and help these guys to set up. That's why we have now CBOs, the community-based organizations, so that you can control this activity that is being done in a large scale. Yeah, small people in small groups doing a lot of work, but the ripple effect is so big that we even have 20% of the diamond that we buy in wherever you want to buy the diamond that you want to buy, 20% comes from artisanal mining, 25% of tin and other minerals which we mine as well. So depending on the country, you'll have either tin, diamond, gemstone, gold, and any other mineral. Like in Kenya, we have zones of certain minerals like gold, you have in Western area and Rift Valley. So if you're talking about economic, environmental, social, governance, the impact in itself, you have to consider the mineral itself. So if it's in Western and Rift Valley, you'd be talking about gold. Gemstones, that is Taita area, Taita-Taveta. Manganese, you have Taita-Taveta, the coastal side, northeastern, eastern, and iron ore, manganese, all these are being mined in Kenya through artisanal mining and small-scale mining. So when you're talking about this, we have to consider the impacts so that if you want to understand an industry, you have to look either bad or good, because we're the ones, we're mining these things for us to use, either in terms of economical value that you get. And while doing this, you have to be conscious about the environment that you're living in. So that's why economic, social, cultural, traditional practices, environmental impact, these things you have to consider when you're talking about this. So I'm just giving a nutshell what we consider when you're either handling artisanal mining. So if I'm talking about economic, if you go to Transmara, Kilgoris, Migori area, you'll find most guys my age or even older to up to 40, they're engaged in those in artisanal mining in gold. Nothing else. Then they used to do farming, naturalism, fishing. All these things have died because of mining. And that's why when you talk about mining, is it sustainable? So that sustainability has to come into place, because case study will be Kwale. As base titanium, the mining itself, the mining activity around the mining area, is it sustainable such that when mining, when the minerals are depleted, are we going to lose our lands? Are we going to lose our economical activity that we used to have either in farming or in fishing or pastoralism or whatever you think of? Yeah. So that's why sustainability is an issue. When you talk about mining, sustainability is an issue. And those are the key things, the four key things that we look at: the impacts, the economic, social, cultural, environmental, and governance. So because I don't want to bore you guys with the nitty-gritties of everything that we look at in terms of statistics or the impact. I'll just go straight and just to mention, the Mosiatunya Declaration was in 2018, which happened in Zambia. Yes, Zambia. Yes, where they were talking about, there are always declarations coming up every now and then because of artisanal mining, because people are trying to formalize this industry. A lot of gold comes from Congo, and which is a very big thing. It can be measured in terms of GDP, but without measuring this gold coming from the mine itself, have to be certified up to going to New York or LSC, wherever it's being sold. If you don't have a certificate, then we should just be discouraging those guys who are using child labor, anyone who's using crude methods or without considering the health, safety, and the environment. If we prevent these guys to sell their gold in the international market unless they follow this declaration, then we'll be fighting this thing of formalization. Because at the end of it, we have to formalize the industry, and formalizing is about the finance, the technical aspects, which is the mining itself, and now the environmental issues. where the health, safety, you have to consider all that. Yeah. So straight to the last point where I'll be speaking on case studies. Just give an example of, as I said the last time, we said Zurura and Zamazama. Those are nicknames for these guys. For South Africa, Zamazama will mean just keep on trying again. Yeah. So that art of trying and just following whatever you don't even see because they don't have the technical know-how, whether it's geological information that they don't have. If you're trying to know that you're supposed to follow this and that, by experience they know, but they can't explain all these things because they don't know if they mean something. So that is a difference, and the attributes that come into place when you're talking about a country, and that's where when you're creating the legal aspects of artisanal mining, you have to consider the conflicts and what are the issues, because most of the artisanal mining will have conflicts between the mining area that you're trying to mine from. So like in Kenya, the Mining Act 2016, artisanal permit, section 1595, where it gave land artisanal miners to mine in blocks. Sorry about that. Whether it's from prospecting to mining, they have to get a license, and the license is given by the Ministry of Mining and Petroleum. So that formalizing that you get a license or a permit, and before you get a permit, there is land consent from the owners. It's your land, then it's okay, and there's no issues of fighting between the miners. You have a consent from the landowner, then you have a permit from the government itself. They know what you're doing. And if you're producing more than whatever artisanal miners are supposed to be producing, like for example, I'll give you an example. If you're producing 25,000 meter cubed of minerals or material, you're moving more than that material, then you don't qualify to be an artisanal miner. So the artisanal miners are classified to be those guys who are doing small activities. Just to protect them, they have to have a class for themselves. In Ghana, that is Kenya, when you have a regulation for that. In Ghana, they had a regulation where they even set up a corporation to help these guys to market their produce, to market whatever they're producing or generating. So they set up a market and gold mining, which is a big thing in Ghana in terms of artisanal mining. So these will help eradicate the middleman that we have. I wish we'll have someone who comes from Transmara or Kilgoris or the mining areas in Western Kenya or Rift Valley. They can attest to how the middlemen use these people, because these people, the artisanal miners, they don't have the ready market. They don't have the contacts either abroad or in Kenya for them to sell this gold, or especially gold, that's what I know. Or even gemstones also as well. You have the gemstone that you have here, but you can't sell it. You can't take it somewhere that you know that you can be cut. If you take it somewhere, wanakupiga chenga kidogo kidogo. So those are the middlemen that they're trying to eradicate, to formalize a place where these people can come with their minerals so that they can sell. In South Africa, artisanal mining is illegal. They've not legalized it because as an industry as big as theirs, I think they're just thinking like we're not supposed to be doing your own mining on the side unless you have the resources. I don't know why they've not legalized it. So, but you have these three kinds where they are partially employed miners. So they call them Zamazama in their country. So that's a kind of artisanal miner, because when he's partially employed, when he's not employed, he'll be going out into the mine and steal from mining companies to dig from Zaman. If a mine is, let's say, 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer, If they're mining on one side, the guy will be mining the other side. Those are the illegal miners we have. If whatever they generate from this illegal trade, they take it to Botswana or Zimbabwe to sell because they don't have a market for their gold or diamond, whichever it is. So these are different scenarios so that you can see where Kenya and Ghana are trying to help these artisanal mining because they can't do anything about it. But South Africa, because the industry was as big, back then artisanal mining was big, everyone could mine when the boom was in the 1920s. But now with time, they now formalized the industry and now it's big. So artisanal mining, they don't have room in South Africa. But because of the economical situation there, the blacks and the white and all that, you'll find people going behind and doing the illegal trade. So that's why I say, like, when you look at this, when anyone is talking about artisanal mining, you just have to know there's a legal side of it and why is it the situation that they have it down there or here in Kenya. So the good thing in my view in Kenya, we've come from far. At least we have a mining act where now it even stipulates an artisanal miner who is an artisanal miner. They've be given space. And also the CS is allowed to designate an area where the miners will just be mining. So they've been given some space in the constitution or the act itself where they're being supported. In every county, you're supposed to have an artisanal mining committee, but not every other county has minerals. So right now, I think there are few counties with artisanal mining committees where the committee will have their members, will have the representative of the governor, the representative of the CS, and the two guys, I think, who will represent the stakeholders, either the government, the national, the local people, and the artisanal miner guys themselves. So what are the take-home or recommendations that we'll be looking at, or the actions that we need to be thinking about, either when we're dealing with artisanal miners or small-scale miners, however you define them, is to support and formalize the industry. I'll give an example for DRC. DRC, some gold is being sold formally, where they go to the mine itself, provided they're not using child labor and all those that we hear about. They certify that gold, bag it, seal it, signs with the local authority, goes to the national authority before it's being sold outside. So with that gold, which is in the pure form or almost the pure form, will have a certificate when it's going outside the country to the international markets. So this is one way of promoting whatever that are doing so that they can get ready market outside the country. So this information, because now the government has it, now it can easily share with the relevant authorities and the relevant people who are interested to know. And that's one of the key issues. The information or data sharing in artisanal mining is not as clear. But like right now, we know gemstone is 60% comes from artisanal mining, or even more than that, I think 80 or 60. But that is an approximate because people just have the gemstones and move away the market without formal structures following, so that we can get the royalties or the community can get something out of it. So in terms of finance, we have CBOs. So all these organizations are done properly. We will have a proper structure, proper structured artisanal mining industry. CBOs, these CBOs will have controlled environment where they can monitor the economical situation, the environmental, the governance, and the social and cultural practices that happen in the local communities. So my take is whatever we have, another thing is community development agreements. These agreements are also in the Act itself, where it supports the community that is living around the mining area. So that is just beside the artisanal mining. But in general, artisanal mining is a very complex subject, but every other day people are coming up with more sustainable artisanal mining industry. Let's say, for example, if you're trying to eradicate mercury, you come up with a gadget that these people can use without harming themselves or harming the environment. So these are the issues that we, as technical people, will be doing, trying to come up with advanced technology for the small guys instead of just thinking about the big guys. While the guys who are involved in the communities down there, like yourselves, the mediators, the lawyers, and all that, when you're trying to formalize this industry, there is a legal side, there's an economical side, there's a technical side. We need to balance all these three things so that these guys are happy and we are happy because we're living together in this world, in this country. So Sarah, I think that will be all from me. And I'm hoping I was clear enough.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. We appreciate your insight as always. I'll just give an opportunity to Rashid to be able to give his commentary. Rashid?
Yes, Sarah. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yes, I'm glad to be part of this session again today. What I can say about the topic before us today is it's a very interesting field for mediators. It is one field that should be of our interest because it can be very highly rewarding financially and also community-wise. So as Dr. Muchiri highlighted, the focus on artisanal mining is very important, and how they manage themselves and how they are organized to be able to have a voice when it comes to any sort of conflict. Then it is very important to understand that organization. In a community perspective, I'd say that as a mediator, we are supposed to look at what we would want to, what disputes are likely to occur before the mining company does the prospecting or does the exploitation of the minerals. So whenever a mining company comes to prospect, to see the possibility of having minerals in a certain region, they are likely going to receive some clash, or rather a backlash from the community or the community leaders, because they will want to understand what is it that you want from our land. What if you are to take from it, what will we get? Are you coming in good faith? Are you coming in with an open arm? Can we welcome you? Are you hostile? So in some way, there has to be that pre-mining perspective that you as a mediator should have, and you should encourage the parties to have, that they must have good perspectives to each other. Again, in pre-mining a perspective, it will help you to avoid future conflicts, because once you have these parties, you have the investor, and you have the government representatives, and you have the community with you there. And during your discussions there, you are able to understand all parties' perspectives, how they intend to interact with each other, for how long, and for what purpose, and in case a dispute arises, how are they going to manage such a dispute? In case maybe they will resort to your mediations, or maybe they will resort to a much more simpler means of solving their disputes. Maybe it is even using their community leaders that they have. But mediation, as a mediator, in the beginning, you have to be there so that to help the companies interact with the communities. You can, if you can be able to get an opportunity, then it will be better for you. And then during the mining process or during the exploitation of minerals, there might arise disputes, maybe workplace disputes for the miners and between the miners and the mining company, or the bosses, the employers and the employees, or any disputes any normal disputes that can arise at a workplace dispute in a mining plant or in a mining factory. These disputes can also arise. Also, disputes that relate between community members and other community members are likely to arise, where a mining company or an investor comes to a certain location, for instance, Kwale, and they prospect. And when it comes to now the process of compulsory acquisition of land, there might be some hesitations from a section of the community members. Some community members might not be to the idea of losing their land compulsorily because there are minerals below it. They might be ignorant, or they might need some enlightenment on how they can benefit once they lose that parcel of land. Now, with that ignorance, they will not, like those people who amongst them entertain the interests of the mining company and the interests of the government. So it is your duty as a mediator, when such a conflict comes before you, to see that opportunity to educate the parties to the dispute in their roles and the benefits of having their land compulsorily acquired, and how both parties in the conflict are able to have a win-win situation for themselves. Another area of dispute might come between the investor and the government. Now, for instance, you are a mediator who is working very closely with the investing company. Your chances of solving any kind of disputes with between the mining company and the government, or between the mining company with the community, are very high, and you're going to prevent many lawsuits that are likely to be presented before the courts if you are at that position, because you will have killed two birds with one stone. First, you have your employment, or rather you have a contract with a mining company, or even with the county government, or with the government, national government, and it is a way of surviving. It is your way that you are going to forge your way. You are going to forge your way forward if you are in such a position where they can access you, they can access your services. You prevent lawsuits, and their reputation remains in good shape. And for you, you make your money, and everyone is happy. So, in the socio-economic perspective and the environmental aspects that are likely to be put into consideration when there's a mining exercise somewhere, it is important to note that at the end of the day, the community expects a certain level of progression. It will want to see the current situation being bettered by the investor who comes. So, as a mediator who is skilled with empathy, you should be able to put yourself in the shoes of the community and understand their socio-economic needs. See the corporate social responsibility of this mining company. What are they bringing to the table? What are they promising to do for the community? That is, if you're doing a pre-mining mediation. What do they want to do for the community? What have they identified as possible ways of giving corporate social responsibility. Maybe have they identified that that region has a shortage of dispensaries or maternal health care systems? Are they going to build them? Are they going to maintain them? Is it going to be for free? How sustainable are they? Are they going to employ people there, or who is going to employ them? So they have to be, as a mediator, you have to know that these companies, these mining companies or investors have a corporate social responsibility that they should fulfill. And where it is not fulfilled, then you can nudge them, the investor. You can nudge them, or you remind them of their corporate social responsibility, because it is basic. It is like a house and a door. You cannot have a house without a door, even if these parties don't raise it. But during caucus, maybe you can ask them, then what have you so far done in the corporate social responsibility for this community? This community has several issues that it is going through. As at the moment, the environmental impact of your mining plant is affecting the health of your workers, the health of the community. So far, what have you done for it in terms of corporate social responsibility? See, that's when now you can use your mediation skills. You have used your mediation skills to bring up an issue that can help negotiate a good deal for the community, and also remind the investor of their role towards the development of their mining plant and the development and the economic development of the community. In the environmental aspect, there are other issues that cannot be subject to mediation. The best you can do is advise. For instance, issues of health, where parties or the community is affected by a mining plant and they have developed complications. For instance, let's say cancer, due to exposure to some radiation that the mining plant is producing. As a mediator, you cannot mediate such things. You can refer that to a pro bono litigator or an advocate for that matter. And they're going to take up the necessary steps, because that is beyond you as a mediator. So as a mediator also, we should identify what can you do and what can you not do, and so if you cannot do, what should you do about it? Should you forward it to another form of dispute resolution, or what other things are you supposed to do? In my experience in Kwale, I can say that a form of mediation called party-directed mediation can really work well in Kwale. It's one form of mediation where, as a mediator, you will be required. You can do caucuses, or rather long sessions with one party. Tell them, talk to them, have a conversation with them about about their interests. Let them bring out their interests, and once you have known what their interests are, ask them about the possible options that they might want to have their disputes being centered on. So once you have them at that position, then you are able to understand their perspective. So your job is to build your credibility with them. Let them understand that you are in control of the dispute, that you are going to help them see a solution to it to the best of your ability, and that you are going to assist them and see the solutions through your eye and through the eyes of the other party. Now, one key role during party-directed mediations as a mediator is to equip these parties with some basic mediation skills that is going to help them see the perspective of the other party, or rather to prevent them from being too defensive, or to prevent them from sticking on their positions, and to help them move towards a harmonious agreement. So when you tell them, for instance, you teach them how to reframe their statements, how to use the skill of clarifying, how they can clarify issues when they're before the investors. Remember, these investors maybe are very good in English, or they have a foreign language that they use. So when they come before you, when they come before the other parties, they are likely to have either a language barrier of some sort, or they might use some vocabulary, or they might use legal terms, or they might use any term that is difficult for the other party to understand. Then if you have equipped this party with the skill of clarification, then they are at a better position to handle the dispute, the mediation, when they are at the mediation table. So the time you used to spend with one party, you can also now go to the other party and spend an equal amount of time, depending with their understanding of their disputes, because others have understood their disputes very well. They know their interests clearly, and they know what they're supposed to. They know what they need from the mediation. So I think with those few remarks, I have clearly indicated some aspects in the community perspective, how we should be ready as mediators to handle matters at the community level, and how to better help the community achieve its goal of getting justice in land acquisition and in corporate social responsibility by mining companies. Back to you, Sarah.
Okay, thank you very much, Rashid. Thank you for sharing your experience with the community. Ideally, this particular session, and I would like to remind us participants to be able to put in your comments and put in your questions in the chat as we go along. Ideally, this particular session was, apart from helping us understand the sector, and today we were particularly, today we were particularly looking at artisanal mining. We also have some time and some space as mediators to be able to think about how do we actually get into this sector? How do we actually break into this area? And I'd like to share a few thoughts with us. And as I share those thoughts with us, I will ask some questions, and I'd like us to engage and just, think through our strategy as mediators. What I'd like to share is this presentation that is titled Mediators Accessing Mines. So we have been talking about mines for a long time. So what now? How do we make sure that, we move actually into the sector itself? What do we need to do as a mediator so that we can be able to find ourselves as part of the people who are actually involved in the mining extractive sector, and not just looking from afar and wondering what can we do, or how can we do whatever it is that we can do. My presentation is short. I will basically be looking at definition, a few definitions. We have talked about accessing the mines. So again, we will be looking at, just a minute. Yes. So why do we need this access as mediators? Why do we want to access the mines anyway? And then finally we'll be able to think about what exactly do we need to do as we prepare for entry, because the whole idea is we want to be able to access the mines. So how do we as mediators prepare ourselves to be able to enter the mines? Okay. Sorry, just a minute. I will stop that and start again. Okay, so the lens that I will use to look at this or to explore this is largely drawn from my own background, and appreciating the fact that mediators are drawn from different sectors or different disciplines, and depending on where you come from, then your discipline could affect the way you actually carry out the mediation. So the things that I look at, or the things that I consider as a mediator that would like to break into this sector, are the issues of education and awareness. How much do we actually know about the sector? How much understanding do we have about what goes on there, and where probably our skills, expertise could be required? What do I know in terms of engaging with the people in this particular sector? We have the community, we have the investors, we have the government that is involved in that sector as well. How is our engagement as mediators with these different people, these different actors that are within the sector? And the other lens that I used to look at is the lens of entrepreneurship. And in entrepreneurship, when you have something, you have a good or a service, however good your good or service is, if people don't know about it, you will never get paid for it. So here we are as mediators, we think that we have something that is very good, something that is very useful for the sector, but do those in the mining industry know that we actually exist? Do they understand that the value that we could actually be able to add to the area? So how can we be able then to think about issues of education, awareness, engagement, and entrepreneurship as mediators, so that we can be able to make ourselves ready for entry into that particular sector? The definitions that I want to just share with us are, who's a mediator? A mediator is a peacemaker, is a collaborator. When we look at the mining sector and the things that we have been able to learn about the sector, we've had learned issues about the contracts, the contracts with the government. When there is any issue, are we as mediators a point that the people in the sector think about as going back to mediators to be able to get help in resolving whatever issues are there? We have the workforce, and Dr. Muchiri has been able to explain to us the different kinds of mining dynamics, so to say, the different kinds of systems that exist. And you have the different workers in the area. Are there issues within the workforce and the so-called sector? How can we as mediators be useful in being able to handle that? And this morning we had a very good presentation that actually even shared with us and gave us more ideas of how we can be able to work as mediators when we are looking at the whole employment sector. We have the issue of families, and we have been able to look at previously, and also have discussions of scenarios where one member of a family or a spouse is sort of bought in a particular way, or is seen to benefit in a particular way out of the activities of mining, and this brings friction or conflict. Can we as mediators go in to be able to support those different families that are facing issues as a result of, you know, the little benefits or the little differences that are seen in the aspect of mining. You have the whole, you know, community issue and the benefits that accrue from the resource that is within the community. Is the community actually benefiting? Is the person who's coming in to do the mining benefiting more than the community? How can these issues of benefits be looked at? The other thing that, you know, the other definition is, you know, looking at the mine and being able to, you know, open our thinking as mediators and saying that, you know, we have, you know, the extractive sector, we have the mines, we have the oil and gas, but we also have many other natural resources that exist, you know, within the country. And how, again, as mediators, can we be useful in being able to solve conflict within the natural resources sector as a whole? Are there any lessons that we can be able to borrow from, you know, things that have already been done to manage conflict within the conservation sector, within the natural resource sector? What is it that we can be able to pick from those different areas? And then when we look at our definitions in terms of access and, you know, trying to understand positioning, are we as mediators actually visible so that, you know, those in the mining sector can be able to see us and also see us not just as mediators who are seated there, but see us as mediators who are actually an option to be able to handle their issues? Are we reachable? Or, you know, are we known to be out there? So are we, you know, someone who's in the mining sector, are they able to, if at the point when they want a mediator, are they able to know, where do I find this mediator? Where do I look for this mediator? And are we also attractive looking? Because it's almost like, not exactly almost, but it is actually selling ourselves. So it is the most attractive one. We have, you know, the option, for example, arbitration is a common one that is used in the extractive sector. But we who are in mediation, how do we make ourselves appealing and attractive so that we also become an option that can be considered? In terms of policy, what are the frameworks that can be put in place to be able to protect us as mediators as we do our work within the sector, and also to be able to protect our work in mediation? So what is the reason why we are not attractive? Is it because when they approach a mediator, then the mediation agreement, the settlement, doesn't quite hold as tightly as when they go for the other options? So what needs to be done so that they can actually be able to think of mediation as an option to be able to resolve their issues? And then in terms of practice is to understand what exactly is our role as mediators in the sector. Is it to wait for when there is an active conflict? Is it to be there so that we are able to be working in a mitigative way and trying to prevent those conflict issues that may arise? Which is the right timing for us to appear? Should we be engaged through the whole process? And of course, being able to think about the whole idea of professionalism. So how can we be able to be doing our work such that we can be looked at as a viable and useful option? Sorry, it seems I would have to go back again to go to the next slide. So just trying to trying to understand why do we need access? Why do we need to be able to get entry into the mines? It's because the sector as it is, and as we have had many discussions before, is a closed area. So we need to be able to get ourselves ready to be able to go to this particular sector. Of course, you know that many times when the mining industry comes in, then there is placement of the community that is living in that area. They are moved to a different place. So we need to be able to be there so that we can be able to solve those issues that arise in that particular area. The whole extractive sector serves different groups. So you have the government involved, you have the investors, you have the different workers, you have the community involved. So it's a rich place that provides a lot of opportunity for us as mediators to be able to work, actually, because having all these different people exist, all these different groups existing together, then there is a very high likelihood that there are certain issues that will need either collaboration or resolution. The people that normally are working, they have, the different interests. So of course, you have the investors, they have at the back of their mind, it's the issue of profit. You have the workers who want to keep their jobs and they also want a safe working environment. You have the issues of sustainability. So the mine is here. What happens once the mineral is finished? Is the area left just like that, or how is there any rehabilitation? What happens, and what actually happens even during the mining process? Is there a very big impact on the environment? And then of course there are different rights. The people that are either in that area or in the adjacent area, they have a right to a clean environment. The investors that are coming in, they want to be sure that their investment is secure, their business is secure. So how are we then able to come in and be able to serve all these different needs that actually exist? There is a very big window of opportunity for us as mediators to be able to serve. And just today in the newspaper, there was a story about a polygamist who earned 354 million shillings after selling tanzanite to the Tanzanian government. And this is a small scale miner. So looking at this kind of figure, then definitely there is a lot of it should be of interest to us, because as we often as mediators, we're always looking for opportunities to be able to make our profession something that actually pays. So when you're actually able to offer your services in a sector that is handling this kind of figures, then mediation will be able to move from the so-called voluntary and low-paying option that it has been for us mediators to something that actually mediators can be able to live on. So how do we prepare for entry into the mines? If you look at the little photo of the mine there, we have those who are going into the mine, they need the lights, they need a ladder, they need the protective clothing. So in terms of the lights, we need information, we need knowledge, we really need to understand the operation so that we can be able to identify the place where we can be able to come in. So we are not just waiting for an active conflict to occur, but we can make ourselves useful and available for the normal processes as they happen. The ladders, what are our ladders that we can use in trying to get into the sector? We have different networks. We have the Ministry of Mining. We have the different counties that are, some counties are more endowed with the mining resources than others. And of course, they will be looking out for the interests of their people in those counties. So being able to figure out, where are the options, where are the places that we can be able to put ourselves, and who do we need to connect to so that we can be able to make our access or our entry into the sector a lot easier. So that's about, who holds our hands? Are there associations? Are there places that we need to make ourselves known, and places that we need to make known what exactly we have to offer? And then of course, when you're going into the mine, you need some protective clothing. So what must we have in place as mediators so that we're actually covered going in? The stock of, I will have my colleagues, move on with it. But what are the regulations? What are some of the things that we need to be discussing so that it can make it much easier for us as mediators to be able to access the sector? And it can also make it much easier for us, for our work, to be given the regard that is required, because it has the backing or support that is needed to make it attractive. As I conclude, I will invite Mediator Nyamato to be able to share with us his thoughts on, to be able to share with us his thoughts on how we as mediators can be able to harness, in terms of the policy side and make ourselves the option or the place to go to. So Mediator Nyamato, you're welcome to go on.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I've been following your discussion. I think we should be giving you more time to create these scenarios. I think you've been hiding behind organizing the whole Nini, and you have not been speaking much, so we expect you to be saying more from now. What you have just said is thought-provoking, and that is indeed what we should be looking at as mediators, because it makes no sense for us to just come and then discuss general perspectives and then we just don't focus ourselves to where the bread is. And the kind of scenarios you've raised, the kind of issues you've talked about are something to consider. Of course, the choice of the topic, extractives, especially artisanal mining, must have had some introspection when that was being put as a topic, and indeed what you have said is what we need to look at and focus. But nonetheless, everything which has been raised by Rashid, by Muchiri, and the others who have spoken is also very important in the perspective that we also need to have. I think the way you've said that when we're going into the mines, we need the protective gear. So that is the kind of protective gear we need, that we need to be empowered first, have the knowledge of what happens in these areas, because you cannot be able to mediate, you cannot be able to claim to be an expert in mediation in extractives when you actually do not understand the processes. You actually do not understand the laws and the policies that are in place. So that is what we need to arm ourselves first with. Once we are armed with this, then it's very easy for us to actually now focus, move to the next stage of focusing. How do we get in? What is it that we need? Do we need a ladder? Do we need whatever it is that we need, those things which move in the mind. So that is what I'm looking at. From the policy perspective, I think in Kenya we've done pretty much well in the region in respect to coming up with laws and policies as to govern the process of mining and artisanal mining. You realize even in other places artisanal mining is still considered, as Muchiri said, in South Africa, it's not regarded as something which is legal. It's considered illegal. And though there's some aspect which is said where artisanal miners are the casual laborers who go down the mines where the machines cannot be able to go and extract, which again, of course, has some issues in itself. You remember the last biggest incident we had in South Africa of conflict in the mining, the Marikana mines, where a lot of people were shot, was due to some miners who were working in the Marikana and then they were underpaid. They were claiming for salary increment. They were maybe whatever they were being paid per hour for being under there, or for whatever rate for whatever they come with from the ground down there, was not enough. They wanted to agitate for maybe increase in the pricing or payment per hour for whatever the formula that was. And that led to a very ugly scar on the South African Republic. People were even saying that these people, they thought that the black leadership had come into place to do away with the apartheid, but actually the apartheid still exists because people were shot like hens, and that was very dangerous and very ugly. So this is likely to bring serious chaos. So I think maybe as a pointer to what Sarah has been raising is, if you do not understand the happenings around the mine, then as a mediator, when such conflict, if they could have employed mediation, because that scenario in South Africa did not just wake up one day and then they started demonstrating and then they were shot. It was a culmination of several days or even months of people trying to agitate, people trying to set up a meeting. Actually, that day was meant to be a meeting day, and then it turned out to be chaotic. The police were called. So if the process of mediation was actually employed, or if there were mediators who were on call to come and mediate the issue between the union organizations for the artisanal miners and the owners of the mines, as it were. I can't quite remember the clear facts, but I remember the incident. Then that people couldn't have died. There couldn't have been that strike in the first place, because they could have been brought onto the table, each could have raised their issues, and then they could have agreed and come up with a decision there through mediation. That's how mediation can be able to save an ugly situation from happening. The Kenyan context, I think now what we've said, we do recognize artisanal miners, save for the only artisanal miners we recognize are those ones with a license. Try to look at the laws, what they provide for artisanal mining. It could be something expensive for an artisanal miner, because cheap license can go for 20,000. That's not something, when you talk of the local places, the indigenous people around where the minerals are found, so something they could easily come up with, and there are other requirements. So some of those things could be able to bring issues. You have maybe minerals within your land, but you cannot be able to procure a license, and then you'll have an issue. You will be prosecuted. You will be prosecuted for that if you actually end up doing the artisanal mining. So those are some of the sticky areas of conflict that can be able to come up. There's the issue of payments. In Kenya, we do recognize, I think I've been looking at the situation in Migori. They have an organization for the gold mining, which is called the Osiris Artisanal Miners Development Corporation, which is a CBO, which is really out to take care of the interests of the miners, which ensures that there is equitable play. It ensures that people are paid by the mine owners. People ensure that whatever it is that they are paid, they also practice the safety standards. There are those people also have the crushing and clearing machines. So in such a context, you're likely to also have conflicts, and conflicts are going to arise wherever money is. There is meant to be conflict. And as a people in the mediation industry, what we need to be focusing on specifically is, how do we strategize ourselves? How do we put our place in a positioning ourselves, as Sarah said, in a perspective that we will be able, whenever these conflicts arise, we will be mediation competent to understand the scenarios, and then be strategic enough to be available at that particular moment to be able to mediate these issues. So that's what we should be able to look at. We could be, for example, I think Muchiri has just pointed out clearly, in Kenya, basically artisanal mining, when we're talking about artisanal mining, it's two specific jurisdictions we're talking about: the gemstone mining in Taita, Taveta, and then the gold mining in Migori, in parts of Migori. So those are the major places. So there are other smaller places, like in Kakamega, there is also gold mining in Makalda areas, and in West Pokot. Those are the areas where we are talking about. So if we have mediators, it's good we are having a section of local dialect mediation. If our mediators could be coming from those communities or from around those communities where these processes are happening, it's important that they be able to acquaint themselves of the processes. Once they are empowered, then when such situations do come by, then it will be an opportune moment for mediator to rise to the occasion and be able to solve a situation and diffuse a situation. Basically, when we're talking about artisanal mining, there is an important perspective which we need to also put into context. This perspective, to my own understanding, is the aspect of community mediation, communal mediation. because you find some of these artisanal mining happens within communities, and it's a community where you know your brother, your sister, your cousin, your relative, and the others. There comes a scenario, especially in Migori recently, there was an issue whereby we had a Chinese, one of the family members in a community where it's a community land, decided to take some small money from a Chinese, and he entered into contract with the Chinese, with the local organizations, with the local government officers, entered into an agreement with this, without notifying the rest of the family members who also have an equal right to the community land, because it's not been demarcated, and he didn't have rights as per se to individually decide to enter into such arrangements. So once he did this, once the Chinese was moving onto the ground with the police, people were wondering, what is this man doing here? This is our land. They were told, this man has actually bought your land. This is where you've been making your daily living from, and you hear one of your drunk uncles or cousins has already sold it off to a Chinese, and the Chinese is taking. So that's likely to bring serious chaos. So this is what we need to be looking at when you're talking about artisanal mining as mediators. How can you be mediation competent to be in a place to solve such an issue? Because that's between a community and the Chinese investor was just coming. This is the same case. This is the same case earlier on we had a presenter talk about the Lamu case. The Lamu case, what had happened was the Amo people, the Amo power people actually sought external help, external PR people to come from London. They procured an organization. They come and purported to have done community participation, and then came up with a report, which they paid some few people, some few elders also received some money, and they were interviewed, and they came up with a report. But when these guys are moving to the ground, the people are like, whoa, whoa, we have not even talked about this. Why is our land being taken? Why are you setting fast this thing up and we've not agreed? So that brought serious issue. And you see, that is a multi-billion-dollar contract. Once the investors had put a lot of resources, because they must have paid this particular person they gave to do the environmental impact assessment and the social impact assessment, quite some good money. They decided not to go through the local channels, and that cost them a lot. Of course, the community was able to unionize through the issue of CBOs and other organizations to come up with the necessary knowledge or necessary manpower. Of course, there was a lot of aspects in regards to sensitization of the locals, and of course the issue of collecting signatures from the local people to come up and stand up against this kind of aspect which was coming up. So if you are put into that particular context, if a mediator or mediation was to be part of the process to actually tell people, you know, there's an MCA, the community needs to be sensitized, this is how public participation needs to be conducted, because when you're doing environmental impact assessment, community participation is important. But what it fails short of describing what amounts to proper community participation. What most experts do for them to actually come up with reports, some of them are lazy. They actually do not go. What you're supposed to do is to call for the local community. You call for a meeting, involve everyone, hear their views, take down their opinions, collect it, and then produce a report, and then come back. You're supposed to do at least 3 or 4 meetings to actually first sensitize them, let them understand, and then come back, have a clear understanding, somebody talk to them in their local dialects, to have opinion makers in the local community, speak to them. Once they have understood, then you come take the report. Now, without this, then they realize maybe some few people were paid, and NEMA is also gone a step further, where they actually insist on the aspect of you demonstrating that you actually did community participation, whereby so people end up take photos at the marketplace and have some online photos which they claim that this is a meeting I conducted, and they attach there because NEMA does not come to the ground. Then of course, when NEMA publishes the notice for people to actually, because NEMA also has to do its own process for it to issue the license. So some of those processes were overlooked. When they actually do this, people are not even aware because it's put in the newspapers, and the people in the local areas do not read newspapers. Or it's conducted in expensive hotels where even the local people don't feel clean enough to go and enter and participate. So that becomes a challenge. So it's for you, an investor, it's for you as an expert to actually ensure that you reach the people and get consensus. So that did not happen, and it ended up costing those people a lot of money. And up to now, the project has since been stopped. That is how powerful it is, because it's also a provision of the Constitution to include the community participation of the local people. So that was not complied with. And of course, that leads to a serious conflict if it was a project which involves government, where government has to give some letters of support. Then they could sue the government on that particular respect. That you see, this is your bit. You ought to have done this or ensure that we are covered in this area, and government could end up paying these people. So that is a conflict which I think is ripe for mediation, and the ripeness in this mediation is community participation. When you're talking about artisanal mining, I think the major area of focus should be issues of community participation. So as mediators, we need to empower ourselves and know how to conduct a community participation, not only an open participation. So having said that, of course, there are also other issues. How the negotiations are done, there is likely to be conflict, especially the issue of the Lamu. There was no proper negotiations which were conducted in terms of acquiring the license. You actually realize that somebody has been issued with a license. So there could be some aspects of fraud in acquiring the license, and that can lead to conflict. There is also a very important perspective which we also need to look at, is the perspective whereby we're talking about land. Currently, the Law Society and the Canadian Bar Association, they have some kind of linkages in that the Canadian Bar Association helps the Law Society in sensitizing. I think Rashid should be able to be knowing better on this. I don't know whether Rashid participated in the last training. They've been training people on mining, on areas, empowering lawyers to be competent in terms of mining and community participation in the local areas and indigenous areas. Of course, Canada has been big on that in terms of sustainable mining in the third world country. So they have been doing that program. So currently we are conducting a survey to be able to come up with policy guidelines on what is the process which is supposed to be involved when it comes to mining, especially in local communities or indigenous communities, whom might not be able to understand properly what provisions of the Constitution are for one. Secondly, government does allow the aspects in regards to compulsory land acquisition, which Rashid touched about or talked about earlier. So when this process is happening, what should be the clear procedure? Because the government is very, and of course the Land Act 2012 also does give some provisions, but in terms of mining, we need to be very clear what the process is, because it also involves international organizations to come and deal or transact. Does this land belong to them permanently? Is it leasehold? If it's leasehold and my land has been bought off by the government to be given to this particular investor, what happens to this land once the investor has since left or the mineral is finished? That is a question to be raised. So we want to develop guidelines in respect to coming up with leasehold, specific leasehold periods, because now it's very clear in the Constitution that leasehold should, for international people, cannot own land, they can only have leases, and these leases should be either 99 years and below. So with this, how do I get, or does the land revert back to me or to the community, whatever the case that is. So if we could be having less, especially these minerals which do not take long, maybe, for example, our oil is likely to take between 25 to 35 years. So we should maybe be talking about having a leasehold of 49 years, so that this land after 49 years reverts back to the people. But once the oil is finished from the year 35, we need to have clear processes of returning the land to its original, or rehabilitation of the land, so that it can be reverted. And then we have clear laws and guidelines on how this land goes back. So some of these things are the things which are likely to bring conflict. So any of these processes, if we do come up with that policy, if it's not complied with, that's a clear process of breach, and that is likely to bring conflict. And as a mediator, you need to be able to be understanding these processes, or when these guidelines do come by, we need to understand what is the perspective of community land, what is the perspective of individual land, what is the perspective when each of these two elements are dealing with compulsory land acquisition, and then this compulsory land acquisition, when it involves another multinational, what is the procedure and process of going through all this, and how does it revert back? So those are some of the things we need to be competent on as mediators, so that when you are actually mediating for a local community on artisanal mining where mineral has been found, people should be able to be explained to. They need to be empowered on this, so that they can be able to be competent in this particular regard, to be able to understand properly that whatever is happening should be able to be happening on these particular terms. Because it's very difficult. Minerals are always found not in towns where people are sensitized. They are found in far off places where people do not have idea. You see the case of Turkana, you see the case of Kuala, you see the case of Taita Taveta, you see the case of Migori. These are far-flung areas from Nairobi or any major cities. Whereby even roads to these places, some of these places we don't have proper roads. It's now that they've been trying to put up roads for whatever the case. So we need proper sensitization, we need clear understanding of the laws. And as a mediator, you can't go to these people without having been empowered on these areas. So that is one area I was looking at, the issue of community participation, where it's likely to bring conflicts. These conflicts, we should be able to resolve them. The issue of land leasing is the aspect of issues of licenses. We have talked about the issue of employment, where maybe a multinational or even a local company is actually mining and paying its people well, or there are issues on payment. That is also supposed to be looked at. There's the aspect of when it's rehabilitation, when the mine is actually done, what happens, especially in the artisanal mining, you find these people dig a lot. They do a lot of digging. So once the digging is done, what happens to that land? Environmentally supposed to be restored. That comes with the terms of the license normally. So you find that somebody who has a license, once the mineral is finished, he just abandons the site and leaves. And these sites have become a big challenge to local community people, in that they later, especially during the rainy season, they accumulate water because there's no proper fencing, there's no proper backfilling of the soil. Some of them are too deep. Kids jump in there and then they end up dying. So that becomes a community hazard, and that raises serious problems. You find communities, there's the aspect of the extraction of these minerals, whereby we do have scenarios where there's blasting involved, and this blasting sometimes is it's overwhelming. If you live within the vicinity of that place, it means if you have built a costly mansion or bungalow, it's going to be cracked all over. So who is going to compensate you? That's likely to be a conflict which is going to emanate there, and there needs to be very clear who is supposed to be responsible for compensating you. And these are issues we need to arm ourselves as mediators to have them in mind when these things do come back. We need to be able to mediate them correctly. especially quarry owners, that has been the issue around Kenya a lot. If you've been watching news, that has been an issue, just been talked about a lot. There is also the issue of, I think the rest of the issues have been pretty much been raised by the other. I don't want to go into those deep discussions. In terms of policy, I think that has been talked about. We have an Mining Act which does bring out those issues. The issues which I think Muchiri raised on the license, there's also in terms of artisanal mining, for you to be able to sell your gold, and then it has to be to some level, then you need to have the license. But there is also another extra license which you need to be able to sell, especially in the Congo. There are issues in regards to child labor. You will actually be surprised that the phone you're using might have been made possible by a child who is under age of 10 or 12, who went into the mines to procure the minerals to make that phone. And that has been an international debate or discussion for some time, whereby, especially in terms of the mineral which is making batteries for the phones, and in terms of the diamonds, where we've been having serious discussions and serious issues around the certification of this particular, because there are children who are involved, in that particular business, and that is not. But in Kenya, I think the surveys which have been done, children are not actually, it's not a big concern as to child labor, because the recent study I saw in terms of child labor, I think 62% of the people involved in this are women, especially in Migori. And when they were interviewed, the discussion was in line that we're actually doing this so that we can pay fees for our kids, which is a good show, because it means the kids are in school, parents are working towards facilitating them to be able to be in school, and that's a plus, which is something we should be happy about. So I think there is the issue of assigning mines and blocks and the licenses. When it comes to communities of artisanal mining, you could find that there is artisanal mining, and there is, of course, official mining, which somebody has been issued a block by government to speculate and then be able to do his mining. You could find that government has assigned your land and you are artisanal miners. So that is likely to bring conflict between government, the local people who are doing the artisanal mining, and the international company or whichever company who has been assigned these rights. So that is also another conflict area which we need to be competent about in terms of resolving between those three arms, because we have government here, the international person with the speculation license, and then we also have the community of artisanal miners who have been maybe depending on this resource, and they are now going to be compulsorily acquired, which they may not like as much. So basically, there's also environmental crimes which do come by, and the other non-compliance with the health issues. For example, the people in Migori do use mercury in terms of extraction of the gold, and mercury is very dangerous mineral. It is a very dangerous element. So it does affect people's health. So there is the issue, maybe the license needs to be pegged in terms of compliance, in terms of not using the mercury if there is another alternative. So if that is breached, then people can be able to sue. If they're actually sick, they can be able to sue whoever it is, the mine owner or whoever it is who exposed them to the mercury. That not being the issue, there is also another environmental crime which comes as a result of this. This is in respect to once this gold is used, it finds its way into the waters. If it's a local stream, then people will be fetching water which is full of mercury, and that does affect people health-wise in a mega scale. So we are having we're going to have a whole community which is affected, who are depending on these waters, and that is going to be catastrophic. So this community can be able to sue the mine owners or the people who are actually conducting this business to be compensated if they have over time been affected. So that is another issue of conflict. So when that comes, people will want compensation, people will want to be paid. So that is also another issue. The other, I think, maybe very last issue I would like to highlight because of time is the aspect of the supply chains. In terms of supply chains, you know, this is Kenya we are living. We are talking about sign of miners. Maybe there are perspectives where somebody is maybe accumulating his gold so that he can be able to be able to sell. And then maybe, you know, this is something which is done in the community. So and so knows some particular person harvested this amount of gold yesterday and he hasn't been able, he's going to send it maybe on Friday or on Sunday for selling, and they could come rob you. So there are such issues. So sometimes before they change into criminal, especially since this artisanal mining happens in a community, maybe it could be relatives. It's not something you'll want to go to court. It's safer for mediator to just come and mediate, and maybe this case can be able to be told, kindly return the gold or compensate this person and never do it again. So that that is part of mediation to avoid escalation to criminal aspects. So the other aspect is in regards to things to do with the poor equipment, where there is not enough equipment in terms of that particular regard. So these are some of the things I think I can be able to come up. Thank you, Sarah. I think can take it up from there. Maybe we address any questions if there is. Sarah?
Okay, yes, just getting back my video. Yes, thank you very much, Nyamato, for being able to give us very good overview concerning the other side, the legal side. And I think as we're just coming to a close, I'll give an opportunity to Joy. Joy, it was really nice to have you with us today. Joy, to be able to give some remarks, and then I'll come back to Muchiri before we have Wangari in the close. So Joy, karibu.
Asante sana, Sarah. It's been my pleasure to be on this forum. This is my second time in our WASILIANAHUB forum. And I really thank you for the opportunity even to allow me to just say a word. I think for me, it's just that I must say that every time I've been in the forum, there's something new I have learned, or should I say new things. And I appreciate the speakers that you've had speak to us. They've been knowledgeable on the topics that they've handled. And it's truly been a worthwhile, insightful, and impactful engagement for me. So I urge you to just keep these conversations going on. They're the kind of conversations that we need to be having, I think, as pioneer mediators in Kenya. We have this, responsibility to just set a very solid foundation for the profession of mediation, for professional mediation in Kenya. And not just for us or for, the mediators that are coming after us, but it's really to be the champions of the change that we are trying to make, that dispute resolution, there's a better way of handling disputes. And Kenyans have a choice, and they can choose the better option, which is effective, which is cost effective, which promotes cohesion in the society, and generally better relationships. So I'm really excited to be part of this, and I look forward to any others that may be coming, because it's this, these meaningful discourses are really helping us and equipping us to embrace the ADR future that is coming. So as mediators, we need to position ourselves, and this is the kind of forums that we need to be having in order for us to be prepared for that. So I really thank you. And Sarah, you've been an awesome moderator. So good job. And the WASILIANAHUB team, really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joy. It's a pleasure to have you. Daktari Muchiri, some final remarks? Dr. Muchiri?
Sorry. I had to make, I was just having a call, sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay, it's that video. Oh, all right. You know, you have to do this Zoom when at your home, whether it's at work, and you have to do all the things that you're doing. So for me, it's been a pleasure being with the guys from other profession, because I think I'm the only mining engineer around here. And I feel that I'm really glad that people are appreciating the mining industry. When Gibson Nyamato is talking about the stuff that he just talked about, he's covered everything that we as mining engineers will be talking about every other day. The Marikana issue, I hear that he understands the Marikana issue, about the impacts of mining, the EIAs, the studies, all these things. And I believe that, and that's one thing that I always advocate, that we're not supposed to be living in silos. Whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a doctor, whichever field you're coming from, you need to know something that the other profession is doing, so that at least you can always cooperate. And that's why I'm glad that I'm part of you guys, so that I feel like I can learn something with what you guys are doing, because I understand where you guys are coming from, and we need you in terms of the issues and the conflicts that we always have as mining guys. And mining industry is always having conflicts, violence and conflict, and we need to resolve that so that we can make profit and live merrily without destroying the environment and all that we need to do properly. So I'm glad to be with you, and I don't have much more to say than just to be that I'm glad, yes, and appreciate.
Thank you, Daktari, as always. Karibu Wangari.
Thank you, Sarah, and for the colleagues on the call, I greet you again. Good evening, and it's really been a great delight to be with you through the Mediation Symposium Day today on the 25th of June 2020. The mining discussion, and Dr. Muchiri, you can be sure that you are tied to us if it's by the ankle or whichever part of the body that we are not going to dissect anytime soon, because you bring in the insights on the sector in such a way that helps us as practitioners to be able to decipher where we can be able to make an entry, and also to be able to engage with the mining sector as we are working on our extractives strategy. So I really thank you, Dr. Muchiri. For colleagues on the call, you may or may not be aware that Dr. Muchiri is the first PhD in mining in Kenya. So where you are, yes, you can afford to give him a clap, because it is not a simple achievement, and that tells you that we have the right person with us on our calls when we have the discussions on the extractive sector, and specifically on mining. This has been the second masterclass with Dr. Muchiri. The first masterclass, we went through the process of mining. In the second masterclass, we have had a discussion on the artisanal mining, and we are looking forward to our next opportunity for a masterclass and also for a general discussion with Dr. Muchiri. Colleagues, we are building think tanks in 7 areas that WASILIANAHUB is focusing in. One is on family wealth mediation. That is already progressive, and our research on it, we have done 1 research, and we have 3 more to go in that work. And also we have a course that we have developed together with experts in that field, because we believe that family wealth should actually be growing and be multi-generational. Secondly, we also do have the second pillar is the corporate dispute resolution. And the corporate dispute resolution, and also financial services, which are closely tied. We are running the Thrive Commercial Dispute Resolution service, which is a service we are extending to chief executive officers and also to CFOs of organizations. and it is aimed at the officers of organizations, that's the CEOs and CFOs, who value their customers, who value their time, and also the reputation that they have together with their clients. The other area that we've focused on is on the extractive sector as a pillar, and that is why we are having these discussions, which are enabling us to be able to greatly understand how the sector works. You notice from Mediator Sarah's discussion that she was asking us, do we understand how the extractive sector works before we can be able to get in? So that is a representation that you have on your screen. It's a representation of Thrive Commercial Dispute Resolution Service, a service, as I said, we're offering, extending to CEOs and CFOs, and it is a service that is being run by our pro mediators. Pro mediators are mediators who we are able to send out to represent us, and they've also gone through certain protocols of WASILIANAHUB so that we can be able to have them represent us within the commercial sphere and also in other areas. In addition to that, we also have the other sector that is of interest to us, is the sector that we had a session today morning, and that was on human resource, so employer-employee relations. And we had a very good discussion today morning with the HR practitioner, who is Rose Sang of Global Learning Solutions, and also Reverend Njenga took us through a case study of him handling human resource related mediations. And the great challenge that was there for us is that we need to support the human resource people so that they can be able to shift from grievance policies, which organizations have today, and be able to move to a resolution policy. Not surprising, also our consultant did indicate that she has never seen any contract, a human resource contract, that indicates that mediation will be the route for solving the dispute or handling any grievances, which gave us some very good food for thought. And I'll encourage you, once the recording is out, please listen to it. And we are also looking forward to have a think tank in the area of human resource, so that we can be able to develop our work in that field. The other sector that we are focused on is on the creative economy, sports and entertainment. And we are looking forward to masterclasses that are lined up to enable us to understand those sectors better. And we continue to enjoy this learning because it helps us to grow so that we can be able to serve much better. I did screen an invitation we have received from the Association of Women in Extractives Kenya. The last session we had for our symposium, we were able to join them on the same evening for our cocktail. This session will be held on Tuesday, 30th June at 6 p.m. And it is the AWEC, that's the Association of Women in Extractives in Kenya. And the topic of the discussion will be the challenging landscape of Africa's mining sector post-COVID-19. What will characterize the new normal? So, ladies and gentlemen, this invitation will be posted in the WhatsApp group. If you're not on the WhatsApp group, please check on the chat for details on how to be able to get on it, so that you can be able to schedule and let's join. One of the things that Mediator Sarah has indicated for us is that we need to be part of the networking, and these are part of the opportunities. We need to be part of the conversation. So this provides just part of the great opportunities for us to engage and to be able to connect with the sector, which as if I'll say what Dr. Muchiri has said, yes, there are disputes in the sector, but it takes us to be able to be in there and with the players so that we can be able to serve them. Sarah Ater, I wish to thank you for holding fort throughout the day. Amanda Maseno, thank you for being part of the discussion today afternoon, and also young mediator Rashid Mbwiza. We are delighted to have you all, and back to you, Sarah. God bless you.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. It has been, now it's close to 11 hours since we began at 7 o'clock. We are grateful for those of you who have stayed with us through the different sessions, and we look forward to having you in the coming sessions. We will close, as we normally do, with our prayer. And we will say our prayer, and then you may leave as you will. And our prayer is the anthem. Thank you. O God of all creation, bless this our land and nation. Justice
be our shield and defender.
May we dwell in peace and liberty. Plenty be
found within our borders.
Amen. Wow. So thank you very much. Nice evening to everybody, and see you again soon.
See you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.